Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience, physical, psychological, medical, spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast, become more aware, and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society. In the creative space, within the social space, our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in. So we have today Zach Werrell, my nephew, who's a law student at the University of Texas. Is that fair?
That's true.
So far, so good. So Zach's working on a book right now. What's the title of the book, Zach?
The title of the book is World's Rules of Politics, or the Difference Between Winning, Losing, and Staying Sane Along the Way.
Very good. What's the basic premise of this book?
The basic premise of this book is how not to sweat on a YouTube channel during an interview as a politician. No, that's not one of the rules. But essentially, I spent years as a political consultant battling the establishment against odds and money. And I decided to go to law school for personal reasons. And so during the quarantine and all that nonsense, which was just perfect timing for law school, because I didn't have enough on my plate, I suppose, I decided to write a book that chronicles everything that I thought would be important to remember if I ever wanted to jump back in, or if anyone wanted to try to figure out what I had learned, and basically how to run campaigns that win, not when you're not supposed to. Because a lot of campaign stuff is just once the primaries are determined or whatever, a lot of elections are predetermined almost by the atmospheric conditions and stuff. So how do you capitalize on the advantages you've got? How do you minimize your mistakes? And how do you properly think about not only your role in a campaign, but how to think about your strategic actions and tactical actions and communications and little tiny rules and maxims for all that stuff.
So who is the intended audience?
The intended audience is going to be basically anyone who's interested in the way the world works right now in America politically will have interest in it. And anybody who's interested in getting involved in politics as a candidate will be interested in it. I think they should read it. And anyone who's an operative or campaign staffer, it's got things in there. So, but beyond being, like I said, a technical how-to guide, which is how all the intro campaign books are, this is a cross between functional knowledge. So like a lot of campaigns would be like, well, here's chapter 1, fundraising. You need to create a list of people to ask. You need to ask the people. You need to write down what they say and then send them a thank you card. Like, okay, that's great. But like, if I'm trying to figure out what to do in a given situation, not how to do it,
right?
There's nothing really like that out there. And the other reason why the book should have more popular appeal is it also has a blend of like a memoir-esque element to it, which not only talks about funny stories or insane things or just ridiculous situations, but also reflections on, in small part, what's wrong and why it's going wrong and how we can do better.
So how long have you been working on this?
I'd say I started writing right around 9 months, a little longer, about a year and 2 months or so.
Right. And so you've been contacting publishers as well, right?
Mm-hmm. I've been fielding potential offers with publishers, and yeah, it's just been an interesting process to write a book. I mean, I've written one before, but this is a much more involved on my end book than the other one, because there's no co-authors, nothing like that. It's all
right. So contacting publishers out, you just pick publishers how?
Well, so I'm not a publishing expert, but basically the way the world works in publishing right now is there are traditional publishers who have the brick and mortar facilities necessary to actually literally publish the book. But as I think you can probably intuitively glean, publishers actually do a lot more than just publishing the brick and mortar, housing the brick and mortar printing press. And so basically there's some, like one of the publishers I'm strongly leaning towards doesn't actually print the books themselves, but they do all of the soft parts, and then they enter into arrangements with full-time printers to keep the book in print in perpetuity. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And I think that it's a shift that is predicted by the technological advances. And I also think that the model that these hybrid people do is very similar to the way that I would think about political campaigns, which is how do you maximize each person's skills and inputs and abilities and minimize the cost. And so, part of the reason I was not interested in the hybrid publishers, but the more I thought about it, it's like, this actually seems to be perhaps extraordinarily more efficient than the old way of doing it. So,
there is a print on demand. Mm-hmm. Is that related in any way?
I'm not 100% sure, but I figure probably part of it. Yeah. Because I don't know that they're going to print like this one. I don't want to, I'm not going to give names or whatever, but the one company, basically you start out with X number of books that you get as part of the deal. But then they're entered into contractual arrangements to ensure that the book stays in print.
That's interesting, because I would imagine that it used to be typesetting, and that's like there's plates and all kind of craziness like that. That is like very expensive to not just to create, but to maintain, because it's like, okay, we build a book, it's got 500 pages, so there's like plates, 500 plates, and now they take some storage space, and then it's moving them around and make sure that none of them get cracked or some other crazy thing like that. So it's like it's just onerous, capital intensive, and labor intensive, and
skill intensive too.
And it's just like, so the digital age is like, well, now it's print it, just prints it, and then you just have information as a digital storage, and crank out another one.
And all the printers, they don't need to have a dude who knows how to type, set type for your book. It's like, oh, the program already works for our printer. Boop, boop.
Right. So back in the day, Anthony Werrell, that's my grandfather, your great grandfather. He was born in 1910, and he was in the 20s. I think he was working in a print shop, and he was typesetting and doing all that crazy stuff. It's like, just, it's just amazing how much the world has changed in that century. I guess that's interesting to me.
Oh yeah, no, the wheels of the future keep turning.
So then it's like, so do you have a timetable for what your game plan is with this?
Yeah, no, I want the book to be out by the end of the year, the very early part of next year, to get kind of into the zeitgeist of the 2022 cycle, and then more firmly instantiated for 2024.
Right. I like that.
And that's another advantage of the non-traditional publishers. They don't take 2 years. They can get it done much quicker.
Okay, so up to then, it's going to be editing and finishing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else is going on?
Yeah, no, I think that this process has really illuminated functional things, but has also, the forced introspection of kind of writing it down has also caused me to muse about a lot of things that are going on, and why I kind of said I need to do something else right now with my life than this crazy political stuff, because I was in Charlottesville. I saw that stuff, and it's like, man, if people are wearing helmets, bulletproof vests, and bringing guns and bats to political events, it's like, this is starting to trend in a very interesting.
That's right. The bias is in the wrong direction. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Looks a little bit medieval, man.
For me, it's like one of the rules is make the juice worth the squeeze. And it's like, you know, I was having a lot of success, winning a lot of races, but it was like, to what is being accomplished? Like,
right.
Literally, so I won 4 congressional races in 1, 2, 3 cycles, and only one of them is still there.
And and it's like the situation has continued to deteriorate by my standard of understanding, which is, you know, considerably, certainly biased. Okay. And it's like, be that what it is, right? It's just, it's fascinating to me to watch, and the degradation of the civility.
And so I don't attribute, like, I think it's a mistake to assume that politicians do anything other than blow hot air. So it's like, what was the point there? I lost the beat. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, it's okay, because it's like the issue is, it's like I do see a lot of that, and it's like just kind of like stick the finger in the air, you know, lick the finger and see which way the wind's blowing, and see what to say. So they're reactive. They're not so proactive, and they're not taking any brave stands, and they're, you know, it's just.
So the system, you know, I'm not going to say that our system was initially set up perfectly or anything. It may have been, but that's aside from the point. Right now, structures of our government and political system are corrupted. And so that's why you are getting foul results. So, for example, I can speak to politicians themselves, but I think it can be more crystallized, and I can speak a little bit more authoritatively on the consulting class and how they've contributed to this whole choking of politics and degradation in tone. And have created like a little niche industry where they get rich off of doing exactly this. Imagine that, right?
Why wouldn't I do that?
So basically, when you study television or forms of advertising, you know, there's online, TV, radio, Nowadays, in the past, you used to just analyze them all forms of media buys, and you could just do across industries, and you would get fairly accurate information. But nowadays, they have to exclude political campaign spending because it is so heavily skewed towards TV that it just makes the rest of the results totally not usable for anyone trying to learn anything interesting. Because
that's not making sense.
Sure. So let me recapitulate.
So let's talk about the gaining information from the way advertising money is spent.
Yeah. So here's how.
Who are we talking about?
All right. So let's say that you look, every single person who purchased an ad of any type, that ad is put into a database, and then you can see, you know, what percentages of overall spending have been on TV, radio, print, whatever.
Right. Where's advertising going? Right.
Right. So if you just look at every single advertising dollar in the United States right now, it would look like TV is still the dominant form of advertising. But that's only because political campaigns are included, and they're so heavily skewed towards television.
Right.
And so part of the reason for that is the consulting class, the way most of them run their business in politics is they have agreements with the TV and print vendors where they get kickbacks if they spend the money. So it's like,
oh my.
From the consultant's perspective, it is a way better idea to spend all that money on TV, business-wise, than it is like
unethical sounding.
Investigate like, 30 years ago, the internet happened, and maybe we should react.
It seems unethical to me. It's like,
I refuse to do it. And I didn't, my focus was, my business was each campaign. I didn't have and that was probably part of my problem in politics, was I didn't see me as the business, because I thought that people who make campaigns about themselves end up treating them like ATMs. And that's the psychology. And it's like, when's the last time a lot of these big consultants that you hear a lot about did anything even remotely close to successful? It's like 20 years ago. And they're still living off of that and somehow managed to fail their way up. And then the political class in DC, the establishment, takes care of their people. And as long as you play nice, they'll get you a lot of jobs. And even if you literally can't win a race and lose a bunch of incumbents in a cycle, you're going to get promoted up. It's like,
there's something else going on is what that means. That's all that means. It's like, and you don't know what it is. It's an occult function, because it's like,
exactly.
It's behind some shield. It's like they're doing something in a smoke-filled room, you know? It's like, and you and me were not qualified to understand it. It's like, okay, we just know that there's obviously some other interests at work. There's obviously some other incentives that have not been clearly delineated that are in the equation.
So when you have a fouled up hierarchy that's in charge of the a hierarchy in some profession or whatever, if it's corrupted, it's probably going to be producing perverse results for some reason.
Yes.
So if people are abusing it for power, then there'll be, people acting like jerks and hitting people or whatever. If it's corrupted along financial lines, then you'll see exactly the phenomenon I just described. And it also explains why our politicians are so stupid. Because in the political world, like our political...
that needs explanation.
It's truly amazing. Incompetence is promoted and valued at this point. And as much as
it's like
go ahead.
It's like, to me, the most recent presidential election cycle has demonstrated that competence is absolutely nothing. It is not. There is no value to it. It's like it's a placeholder that signs stuff.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how the system works. And so the system, again, not to sound conspiratorial or trying to boil...
That's appropriate disclaimers all in place.
Right, and not to inappropriately boil things down to a univariate cause. But I would say that the system itself is set up to either incorporate disturbances or to eject them.
What's that mean, eject the disturbance?
So let's say the Tea Party movement is a disturbance.
Yeah, it's out.
Right. So it gets co-opted, and so it doesn't disrupt the system. It becomes incorporated as a part of it.
Yeah, it must be incorporated, co-opted, or destroyed, or invalidated by propagandistic means or something like that. Okay, I get that one. And so and then it's like, yes, disturbances that are generative of reinforcement of our existing and preferred bias. Those will be amplified by all means. And it's like, it's coordinated, there's no doubt, between interested parties that are not obviously connected in the general public's mind. And but there is certain orchestration of interests, and I regard it, this is interesting because it's like we have a disturbance in our family as nobody knows this, but it's like we have it's like this. So you're the disturbance, I'm the disturbance, okay? and it's like this. It's like our family tends to represent the reigning liberal bias. Okay, and they tend to favor it in some fashion, or at least are substantially supportive of it, and we're disturbing to that
status quo.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's like I see this as an interesting thing. I was reading an article yesterday, and it was about the people who are planning for the future and see what the future is bringing. So they're predicting what's going to happen. That would be us. Start planning for it, and then we just get rained on like ducks, man. Just rained on and kicked around a little bit, and that's what's been going on for a long time. It's like, because I know I've been seeing over the horizon, going, oh my, this is looking rowdy, because the system seems to be destabilizing, right?
I would say that it seems like there are large jets of steam pouring out of places it shouldn't be.
That's right. That shouldn't be there. And I said this, it's like that, you know the story of Chicken Little, I'm sure you do. So the story of Chicken Little, it's like, here's the trick. This is what's disturbing to all my parents and your parents, okay? Is it Chicken Little was right, man. The sky is falling. Make sure you don't end up under one of them pieces. It's coming down, right? And try to see how you can profit from it, right? And at least not get injured by it. That seems to be what's happening, a general system failure, and then they're attempting to reconfigure it and maintain control all at the same time, which is like, that's a masterpiece of work, especially when you're dealing with insurrectionists who don't happen to agree with you. Oh, that was a bad word. That's not a word we use. It's dissenters or prognosticating a future not governed by the past governors who caused the problem that caused Chicken Little to become so disturbed.
No, it's, for example, okay. I don't want to tell that story.
Focus.
I know, I'm trying to find a different story. This one was too perfect. It's like, but I don't want to advertise.
I understand. We'll do that when we're not recording.
Yeah. So immediately after I made a stink about these girls trashing white people simply for having white skin in a law school discussion, and I called them out for being racist. Literally 3 weeks later, the head of the student group at the University of Miami Law School, who is a Black woman, got in trouble, but didn't get in any actual trouble for saying I effing hate white people or whatever, or some permutation of that. And it's like, I made a humorous version of that. And then 3 weeks later, someone literally just comes out and says it. And it's like, I am trying to be funny, not predict.
You can't keep up, man. You're just like, you're funny only because you said it first.
I know, and this is the thing. Every time I say something that's intended to be funny, it comes true. And it's just like, I'm not even trying to be Chicken Little. I'm just trying to make a joke about the damn sky. And it's like...
It's like this. It's like this. It's like fact is stranger than fiction, they tell me, right? It's like this. And it's like, it's what I find interesting about it is hyperbolic expressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like cantilevering itself out exponentially further and further, just more and more ridiculous outrage.
Because, well, here's the reason. There's no resolution. There's no coming to terms when there's an emotional conversation, unless you become empathetic towards the other or vice versa.
Ah, this is very good. This is very good. So I'm going to discuss this because I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and his job is in what he calls ecological psychology, which is a field that I never heard of until I met him. And so that it goes like this. The conversation pertains to this, and it's like it has to do with intuitions. And I'm of this of a certain belief structure, and I wrote this down just today, okay? Because I've been searching for the diode. I'm like, how are these people getting it wrong so always? And I'm like, there's a diode in their head backwards that is processing information upside down. And I'm like, I figured out what it means. Because I'm like, inadvertently discovered the diode yesterday when I was drinking my iced tea with the lemon. And it's like the nature of the diode goes like this. The diode is related to your intuition. Okay? And your intuition is informed into you by the time you're 7. So your family charges you up and there you go. Okay? And it won't change. And so and your intuition is, by the standards that I'm using, the definitional standard is the intuition tells me in all social situations what's right and what's wrong for all players involved. Okay? Which is to say there's mostly not novel situations occurring because you go to the coffee store, you buy coffee, you go to the convenience store, you buy some coffee, maybe a water or whatever you're doing. But you know how everyone's supposed to behave all the time. And when you're doing that normally, no cognitive processing is necessary because it's just like, where's the coffee cup? Where's the parts? Put them together, give them the money, get out, right? And there's no brains used at all. It's just like this.
Autopilot.
So somebody does something funny, you're like, whoa, dude, are you robbing the store? Are you starting to fight? Or are you just freaking nuts? Or are you talking on your cell phone? What's going on here? Because this doesn't make sense in this milieu. So it's like, we call the smooth function non-cognitive. I call that moral. because we can all cooperate and accomplish our objectives and get out with minimal friction. So somebody generating a disturbance is like, what are you doing? That's amoral behavior, necessarily disturbing the flow and cooperation of the whole and diminishing the efficiency of our economic activity together. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the intuition is the name of this, and it is the of what's right and what's wrong. And it's like there's two different diodes. One's male and one's female. And that is general. It just has to do with how the values are stacked. And the male thought is like this: what's true and how does everybody feel about it? In that order. And the female is, how's everybody feel? And is it true? And sort of true? True doesn't matter as much as how everybody feels. And that's the conflict that we're having here. And they can never change, because when anybody comes into conflict, we get the dissonance, they double down on their previous. This has been the conflict throughout all human history, probably going back into reptilian days. It's like the males and the females are always kind of like edging for who's getting advantage at the moment, right? And so it's like this. That's what it appears to be. And it's like, okay, that's all I have to say on that subject. But that's the nature of the diet. It's about the intuitions that are in conflict. And that's it. That appears to be what's happening right now, which is the feeling types have advantage momentarily in the social realm. And it's like, so, okay, I don't want to say too much about my personal life, but it goes like this. It's like, I have been spending an immense amount of time and effort coming to terms with the fact that my intuitional bias is a loser at the present time, and suck it up, buttercup. And the real kicker is this. It's like, so see, since Zach and me are family, this is for the audience, Zach and me are family. So we have all these, we know all kind of backstory that we're not sharing, because it's like, we don't want to disturb our family more than we already do, because hello,
sorry,
we got to live with these people.
We don't mean to, it's just the way we are.
So it goes like this. Okay. That made me lose my train of thought a little bit. That's okay. So the conflict is how do we communicate with these people who do not appear to be listening to us in the least place?
Well,
does that make sense? That's what I'm crafting the dialogue so that I can understand how to communicate effectively without just making them bang.
You're attempting to use words when words won't do. Show, don't tell.
Well, this is interesting, because your grandfather, I was chatting with him, right? And he became interestingly disturbed because he's like, you guys use such strong adjectives. And then he doesn't like that, man. He's like, he likes it to be just rational.
Well, I think so. You know, I agree that I have used explosive rhetoric in, places sometimes where explosions are frowned upon.
I'm going to tip my hat to that one. Hang on, I got to get it. I'm going to do this. Like, what? Yes, sir.
Yes. The gunpowder storage building in downtown, it's going to be a nuisance to everybody nearby. It's the law. And there, you don't put a gunpowder factory next to a school.
We don't do that.
Or at least it's frowned upon. But anyway, there's a few different ways to think about this. So the first one is, okay, World's Rules of Politics.
Right.
First few chapters, it's near number 10. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
And so there are two ways to communicate. Well, linguistically, there's two. You can write an active voice or passive voice.
Right.
Right. And then you can also explain.
Yes.
Or you can show.
Wait, can I mansplain?
What's the ending of that word?
Explain.
Yeah. What does that sound like? Bullshit. Logic, white supremacy. So
why didn't you say so, brother?
No, and so hold on. Before let me pull this up. So everyone thinks it's ridiculous, but we're going to go to the Smithsonian, the National.
You're not going to get us in any trouble, are you?
No, this was up at the Smithsonian for years.
Oh wait, are you sharing?
Yeah, give me a second. So like, okay, let's see. We need to do white supremacy. So basically, when people say there's no way what you're saying is right, and
That's
it's like
interesting. So that's a moral argument.
well, it's just that it's so beyond belief that how could it possibly be true?
Wait,
okay, I've almost
what are you talking about saying?
So, for example, when I say people say that being on time is a symbol of white supremacist racism or assumption of whiteness, people are like, you have got to be smoking meth down with the homeless people down by the back bridge, dude. There's no way that's true. And then it's like, well, dude, check this out. Let's open image a new tab and share screen with everybody.
I like this. This is fun, Zachy.
Yeah, it's like I don't make this stuff up. This is actually.
I know I'm not that good. I'm not that creative. I'm so sorry. I really am. Come on and share it.
I'm getting there. Share screen.
Boop. You need more practice. There you go.
All right, and then we go.
Okay,
here.
where's this from?
This is from
Smithsonian.
Let's zoom in more.
Cool.
Let's zoom. Come on, zoom in. Control plus. All right, it's not zoomed. I don't know why. Let's try Alt. Nope. Function. Nope. All right. I don't know why it doesn't want to zoom. But here down at the bottom,
it's large enough.
This says,
"Oh my, that's tiny."
National Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian. And
wait, that's where this comes from?
This is called Talking About Race, National Museum of African American History.
Wait, so it's wait, go back to the bottom and show them where it's at, just so they can, if they go to this site. Wait,
yeah.
Okay.
So if you just look up assumptions of white culture, whatever.
So this, hey, wait. I'm going to make a note for the editor people to capture the URL.
I'll send you a URL right now.
Capture the URL, and then we'll put it in the show notes if they want to look
at it. Yep. But so I got it copied. But here we go. So at the literal National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is not like, you know, some idiot down off of a highway, you know, roundabout running a gas station in rural Georgia, or like some idiot in San Francisco who's tattooed their whole body and changed their eye to look like a reptile. No, this is not crazy people. This is not outliers. This is not fringe. This is what
it's establishment order is what it is.
It's displayed at the Smithsonian, for crying out loud. And so here, let's read.
Wait. Can we say splaned at the National Museums in the Smithsonian? Splaned?
Yeah.
Is there any type of splaining? It is.
No, only white men can explain.
Mansplain.
All right, so aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States. All right, family structure, the nuclear family, mother, father, and children is the ideal social unit. Work ethic, Protestant work ethic. Here's an assumption of white culture, everyone, you white devils. Hard work is the key to success. Work before you play. If you didn't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough. Future orientation. Here are some white things. If you're acting white, it's because you're planning for the future. It's because you're delaying gratification. It's because progress is always best. I don't understand how wouldn't that make the progressives white?
Oh my.
Aren't all the...
No, just skip that. Skip ahead, man.
I'm processing error.
Don't tilt. You're going to tilt.
Let's see.
Wait, you hit the time function there.
What time function?
Hit the time function. You said time. See that clock?
Time. Oh, yeah. Follow rigid time schedules. View time as a commodity.
So it's like this. It's save time. The trains run on time. Nazi fascist. Okay.
No, so I don't want to really delve into racial milieu of nonsense that's going on in this country. But the point of bringing this up is I think it's one of these examples where you just show them how crazy it is. This is
wait. What is it that is?
Well, the reason I said it in an abstract way is because this is just one example of the manifestations of complete and total racist nonsense, or, you know, anti-American nonsense, or just generally anti-social.
I would say it's reasonably disturbing and intentionally disturbing and disruptive nonsense. which is to say it's not totally nonsense, but it's like it's an abstraction that is disturbing the established order by intention. Okay, so that's a fairly innocuous description that my father could listen to.
Yes, and I would say, just to be more precise, intention doesn't mean the directed intention of an individual person. It can be dispersed and non-individually intentional, but your behaviors can manifest in a system which results in this.
Oh, so it's like crowd behavior.
Yeah, I mean, like, people behave differently in crowds. Like, and not right. I'm not comparing people to chimpanzees, but I'm saying if you watch, if we go down, go lower and lower into the speciation that led to us, you can see that, like, a chimpanzee by themselves might be acting totally normal and calm and wants to, like, learn how to talk on the keyboard and, play with pots and pans or whatever. But you throw them outside and they go totally ape, for lack of a better term, no pun intended. And, they start running around and screaming, and they'll be shaking the bushes, and then they just, like.
Right. So there's the function that you're referring to, I believe, would be emotionality, expression of emotionality versus cognitive functioning. And group behavior is like there's a dispersal of responsibility. So there's nobody responsible for crowd behavior, right? And people behave more poorly in crowds.
I would say, in the abstract, there's nobody in charge of group behavior. There can be times where people cynically manipulate group behavior for their own gain or whatever. But yeah,
that's right. So it's like the interesting function is disinhibition in a crowd. When you're in a crowd, you're less likely to be inhibited by behaviors.
I agree. Yeah,
that's interesting. So. Right, and to recap that a little bit, it's like I'm just going to summarize for the audience. Crazy things are happening, and it appears to be from one political bias group, and individuals are not necessarily responsible for the entirety of it, although they participate in it in a collective way that is productive of nonsense that is disruptive to the established order. And it cannot be regarded as accidental. It has to be for somebody's interest.
Right. This is kind of the problem with this abstract ideology. I can't just say, look, here's the like left's foreperson on all things racial, and whatever they say is determinative. And there's not just some one person saying all these things that then everybody has to follow. There's no dictator, which makes it more difficult. Because, for example, I send stuff to people. It's like, here's the insanity, even more insane than the last time. And, they don't. It's kind of disturbing because it's.
What's disturbing?
Because you can't, when you try to, if you had a personified idea to rally them against, you can say, just watch this guy talk. And then they go, yeah, he's crazy. And he's the foreperson for all the ideas. So the idea is clearly bad or whatever. Without a person sitting there, it makes it really, really hard to communicate to people about these things, especially those predilected towards feeling. Because if you can see the bad person that's saying the bad thing that makes you irritated, then it motivates you. But if you can just dismiss it as some crazy person.
Right. So the issue will be this. So it's like, and this is interesting because it is like the premise of mostly peaceful protests. Right. And it's like, but it's like so dismissive of bad behavior. So we're going to ignore the bad behavior. And this is Marcuse was talking about this according to the sources that I've been studying, which are secondary sources studying Marcuse. Marcuse says anything the left does is okay, no matter how bad it is. Anything the right does is bad, no matter how good it looks. So being on time is bad, and only burning some buildings is mostly peaceful. It's like,
so this. I'm going to make this point. I don't care. This
one. Oh my, that's a disclaimer.
So everyone's like, well, not everyone, half of everyone is saying, oh my goodness, democracy was about to die, and the insurrection, you know, blah, 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 Jan 6, and it was like literally the Civil War, it was worse than the damn revolution, and the king was coming. Like, it was worse than Lexington and Concord even. You know, really, my question now is, for whom was January 6th a Reichstag fire? Was it Trump's Reichstag's fire or big tech and the Democrats' Reichstag fire?
Right.
Who capitalized? Yeah, cui bono. Who capitalized and doubled down on authoritarian behavior in the wake of Jan 6? I don't think Trump's, whatever you want to call those people, all they did was, there were some people acting violently and stupid. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't like stupid violence, political or otherwise.
Right.
People are stupid. But
oh my.
All they did was delay the vote a couple hours.
Well, the issue is this is
and we have literal parts of the country where they have literally overthrown the local authorities and declared sovereign areas. Where's the insurrection here?
We're not an argument, man. I'm like, this is it's like, this is just like
who had their Reichstag's fire? Certainly was not Trump.
Right. And so the issue kind of comes down to this is, I've talked to my friends that are let's say intuitionally contrary to me, right? And it's like this, it's amazing how much vitriol comes up when discussing that day, which is quite interesting, because it's like, you know what? It's like, you know, burn down Minneapolis, burn down Seattle, burn down Portland, you know, it's like, but that doesn't bother me so bad. It's just people behaving poorly that need to be punished for creating a civil disturbance. Ah, you've done it. You've opened up the magic case, because yesterday I came up with a premise that I wanted to share with you.
Oh, okay.
You will be the second person I've ever shared this with.
All right, let's do it.
So if you've read Gibbon's Fall and Decline of the Roman Empire,
I've thumbed through it and read passages. I have not read the whole thing.
Right, it's quite an interesting read. But so in the second half, you know, like after the Roman Empire falls, the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire went on for like another 900 years. And it's like this. So during that period, what they did was, they're having these barbarians, these crazy dudes up north that are just bad dudes. They're bad, and it's like
Ostrogoths and
just Huns, and it's like, so the story is the Roman delegation goes out to negotiate with these guys, and they're like, we're not going to give you your money, and what do you say to that? And it's like, they get the response is 3 arrows. Okay, one has a sparrow, one has a frog, and one has a mouse, and these were shot from horseback. And these are your present, and it's like, your money will be right here. So what they had was external barbarians being paid not to invade, right? So they're paying tribute to the local chieftains, so the chieftains don't get irritable enough to come do bad things to my empire. Okay, so what has occurred in this revolution with democracy is internalization of the barbarians, and now they're demanding more pay. That's what it looks like to me.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying that this is true. I'm just a thought here, and I'm not sure where I stand on it. But this may be worth playing out somewhat. Why do we assume that democracy is an a priori good?
That's right. It's a god.
Or yeah, but it's like I'm not saying that it's not right to like empower people to have a say in that stake in their, you know, governance, or whatever. Right. What I'm saying is, are we so sure that democracy is the best way to ensure that interests are promoted effectively? It's like, well, let's look.
True. That's a very good question. And it's like, okay, let's say it's a question.
Yeah, I think
is this true is the question. How do we find out if it's answered properly? How do we answer the question? How do you evaluate that mechanism?
So I have another little side project that I don't know if it's ever going to be serious, but I call it political warfare technology. And so basically everything from like everybody, 700,000 people going to vote for Congress to elect one representative, that's a form of political technology.
Yes.
A filibuster in the Senate is a form of political technology.
Yep.
An appointment, and so basically political technology is designed to mediate conflicts between divergent interests and desires. And so political tools are the way that we mediate them. And democracy and democratic principles are a tool in the toolbox to resolve disparate conflicts.
No, so Doolittle talks about it as a marketplace for resolution or negotiation of interests which are at variance with one another.
I think that's right. I mean, because think about it. Like, people always complain, like, oh, Congressman so-and-so is terrible. And it's like, the only candidate who will ever be perfect for you is you.
That's right.
And so what we have, the way that our political technology works right now is we try to divine, like, the most preferred individual amongst the 700,000.
Oh my.
A majority. And they are then empowered with implementing what they view to be in the best interest of their constituents. And so the question is simply a flat up and down vote by a group of 700,000 people an efficient way to actually resolve the political divergences in that body politic? Is that leading to resolution and diffusion of tension, or is it leading to increase of tension and potential for bad outcomes?
Well, that's interesting in the light of the recent changes in media. As the media becomes activist and biased, and seems to be getting seeking clickbait through promotion of emotional outbursts of angry nature.
If it bleeds, it leads.
That's it. So it's like generating outrage and madness as a commercial activity, right? In the body politic.
I don't think that they are intending to create the residual psychological disturbances. I think what they're doing is they're doing what is the most efficient way to retain their seat in office, which is in a democratically elected position.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the media themselves, not the politicians.
Oh, I mean, I would say they're all in a criminal syndicate, but the media writ large. No, I think so. This comes back down. This is another iteration of the fundamental divide here. And in the fundamental worldview divide. If you're a journalist with biases and you believe in objective reality and truth,
oh my,
there's a difference in output than I think everybody's biased and everybody will be biased, and it's impossible for anyone who claims they're not biased is a fool, because they are. However, when you have unmoored yourself and your output, which is supposed to be reporting facts, when you have unmoored...
Oh, that's interesting right there. Supposed to be, right? Depends who's doing the supposing.
No, I think that's true. But I think that they would say that even the people that are making up stuff and whatever in the media, they believe that they're doing the truth too. It's just there is no truth to which any of us can refer to validate.
Okay, so see, this is interesting, because it's like this. It's like goes to the subjective over the objective, which is the diode. I talked about the diode, right? So this is subjective over objective and objective over subjective. And it's like, never the two shall meet. These are mutually antagonistic, necessarily oppositional intuitions, one of which must dominate the social landscape. And it's like this. We are now, the subjective appears to have superseded the objective, which is the cause of much misery on my point, because I have suffered greatly for falsely believing the objective superseded the subjective.
Are you saying in the current paradigm or in the abstract ideal world? I think in our current paradigm, I agree with you, but
that's the current paradigm.
So
the abstract ideal world is where I don't have to suffer so much. That's my theory.
Sure, the grass is always greener in the utopian side of the street.
Well, no. The issue is this is like so that's why
I'm just poking you.
I know it's like I appreciate that, but it's like that's why I spent the last 5 years doing research and trying to understand while I knuckled under and sucked it up, Buttercup.
So I think So remember we got in, so a few years ago, I got into studying postmodernism.
Right.
And this postmodern versus modern divide is literally just another instantiation of objective versus subjective basis of reality.
Right. This is interesting because the modern would be like your grandfather. He's modern liberal.
No, I'm not talking philosophy.
No, I'm just talking about just intuitional, attitudinally. He believes it's objective over subjective. And they've inverted this polarity and convinced him that nothing is new under the sun. And so he doesn't recognize what's actually occurring because it's like, it's outside the realm of possibility. Because it's like, you got to be kidding me. Because like I ask him some questions. I go, only white people can be racist. And he goes, I'll never believe that. I go, okay, I'm just saying what's going on. It's like, nobody's saying that. I'm like, okay. Right, I'm like this. It is like this. Just try to keep your hat on and remain calm by this silliness going on, because it's like they can't hear you because it's like the things you're saying are so outrageous. It's like the reality of the situation cannot strike home because I feel like coming through the appropriate channels, and you're too invective about it with your verbiage.
People like to be led, and so what's happened is, like, the people who are used to being led based on outbursts of feelings or, expression of emotion or whatever, if the media and the politicians on one side of the aisle are shielding you from outrageous things, but you're used to saying, oh, if there's something outrageous, they're going to tell me, and then you're presented with something that's outrageous that they're doing, and you haven't been
previously informed,
right? And so then I can see. I mean, it's like
it's invalidation through inappropriate channel of information acquisition.
No, it's the human consciousness is in part a set of blinders.
Yeah. Oh, it's hugely because it's like there's too much information occurring. You cannot pay attention to it all. You must filter it out because it goes to this premise called cognitive parsimony. Okay, so it's the same.
I get water. My mouth is extremely dry. I don't even.
Okay, wait. Coffee break. Let me hang on. Wait. Make me the host again. Hang on. Make me the host again. No, I'm going to pause the recording. And we're back.
We are caffeinated. We are hydrated. We are stretchinated, and we're ready to talkinate like crazy about everything in society.
Raising some cane. So, what do you got to say, Zach?
Well, let's circle back to a discussion about the metaphysics of reality and the manifestations. Okay. So we were touching on this. So as I've said multiple times today, it's like there's the recurring theme in intellectual debates,
okay,
almost all, and debates generally, always seem to come down to this fundamental divide: subjectivity versus objectivity of reality.
That's the diode.
Yep. That's your diode.
It is how your values are placed in your, and we call it intuition.
Yep.
Tells you how to behave.
And so we were discussing, a very easy, just pure philosophy iteration of this would be postmodernism, which is there is no objective reality. Everything's a social construct, and thus feelings govern because it's the only way to mediate conflict in the absence of an objective reality. And then we have the modernists, who are like the Enlightenment people who developed the scientific method and rational inquiry and all these things that was about there being an objective truth to be found. Okay, so you're like, wow, that's great. So a bunch of philosophers.
I want to introduce a thought in here because I speak with Greg Enriquez, who's the clinical psychology professor at JMU, and he talks about the Enlightenment Gap, which is the sciences failed to adequately incorporate the subjective realities.
No, I agree.
Date. And so the failure of the objective gained upper hand in the industrial age.
Hold on. So there's a Neil Young lyric that's perfect. It's Thrasher. Not so those thrashers come up. All right, lyrics. Hold on. He's got a perfect little that it just popped in my head, and it's a perfect explanation of what we see. Okay, here we go. Where the eagles glide descending, there's an ancient river bending through the timeless gorge of changes, where sleeplessness awaits. I searched out my companions who were lost in crystal canyons when the aimless blade of science slashed the pearly gates. And so the aimless blade of science slashed the pearly gates. And I think that's actually an extremely metaphorically potent image.
This is good because this is the verbal representation of what Enriquez calls the Enlightenment Gap, which is science as an unfeeling.
It's like an AI
agent. It's a disruptive agent that is not feeling and not accounting for the subjective for reality elements.
I think that, so it's like, I would say that science is almost developed into its own like soft or wetware version of an AI. It's like this, it's our augmented intelligence leveraged out of our individualized brains and individualized experience. And so when we are, I think you might disagree, but I think humans are a super organism. It's like we've leveraged out of our head our ability to deduce by rational means. And then when all of us are doing it together, we lose our ability to collectively or individually say, are we doing the right thing here? Is this now serving pro-social ends?
Right.
I'm not trying to be a Luddite or anything like that. But a technological determinism.
Right. No, so it goes to the incomplete nature of the sciences, which is to say, the sciences must incorporate the intersubjective variability in order and adequately contain that information so that we can make decisions about how to proceed from here with some precision and decidability.
So I would say that I think that what you see here are the sciences that are fundamentally rooted in reality, why they are less kind of off into dangerous places than the softer sciences that are less connected to a physical or objective reality and instead of purpose.
Well, I point to mathematics that now is under assault by these very people, and it's interesting because it's like the use of the form mathematics as a template to project ideological preference, which is most irritating. Because it's like when I use the math problem that I make the 7-year-old solve, contain embedded in it some postmodernist, what I would regard as nonsense. I'm objecting to you embedding your ideology, but their argument will be something to the effect is.
So this is what they do. This is exactly what they do. So they say, we are not teaching critical race theory. What they define teaching critical race theory as is, here's what Barack Obama's professor who invented it at Harvard said, and this is the basis, and here we have the philosophy and the philosophers who that's what they define teaching critical race theory. The way that they sneak it in is this is not literally true. I cannot recall this word for word, but in essence, it's true. So the math questions used to be a number 2 and then a multiply and a 2, and you're supposed to put the answer at the bottom. Now it's little Timmy is black and Timmy couldn't afford this and Johnny is white. And so how tall is Emotep? When does this have to do with math? Any of this shit? Like, is it 2 + 2 = something? Or are we trying to insert into the fact that even in mathematical questions, you should be considering, racial equity. So even where the answer is 5, if racial equity is needed to remediate the badness of that answer, then they will throw out the mathematics,
in the math course.
Right. And so it's like that's the more insidious thing about this too, is the fact that it is in the background.
No, so this is interesting. So like this I came up with yesterday too. So I'm like this. So I'm using this form, which is the form of it. And I wrote this before we met. So I got it on my book right here, which is the Intuitional conflict is what I'm interested in at all scales of human social interaction. It appears to be at baseline apparent in all social situations. And so I want to use the critical race theory form by saying it's not a matter of if, but how much such social conflict, such intuitional conflict manifests in any particular social situation. Does that make sense?
No, say that again.
It's like this. So we have intuitional conflict. We're talking about these diodes. Mm-hmm. So people who have opposite diodes,
they're trying to solve a problem.
They're having a problem because there's a dissonance, because there's subjective objective dissonance. What one is going to supersede the other in this circumstance. And so it's not a matter of if, but how such conflict manifests in any particular social situation that is of interest.
Yes.
Is intuitional, critical intuitional theory.
Well, so, yeah, no, I agree. And so to then illustrate it with another manifestation
right.
of the divide, for example, in law, the big divide is over the metaphysics of the law is there's natural or God or divine or, just the law of humans that is real. And it's like we can say, oh, in this situation, the law of nature says, you got to be stoned to death or whatever. And then there's the legal positivists or legal constructionists or whatever who would argue that the law is nothing. Well, the legal realists would say the law is nothing more than what the judge decides at the given moment that the gavel drops. And for whatever reasons, he, if he had a bad sandwich and that's why he was mad that day or whatever. And I think that manifests itself into a situation where the judges and the lawmakers think that they're totally unbridled from the law itself.
Reality.
They're not trying to divine what the law is. They are trying to divine what the law ought to be.
So it's outcomes based.
It's outcome determinative. We would call that that form of constitutional interpretation. It's called consequentialism.
Yes.
And so, the main forms of constitutional argument are history, tradition, text, intent.
Yeah.
And then you've got consequentialism, utilitarianism,
yes.
Et cetera.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, and I was feel for this with the guys who were dealing with the election, complaints about the election in 2020, the judges. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, the consequences can be quite personal. And it will behoove the judge to be aware of that when he's making his decision for his family and his well-being, right? In addition to whatever is going to happen socially, it's like, okay, this could get kind of rowdy, right?
So in that regard, I don't think that natural law and legal realism or legal positivism are necessarily mutually exclusive.
Huh.
I think that you can recognize the subjective influences on a particular judge's behavior. That may well be the law for those two people and the judge and the jury,
Yes.
But that does not mean that the judge was divining, or trying to rationalize what the law is.
Right. So this caused me to think of something. I would like you to, this is a research subject that might be of some interest, which is like this.
Okay.
We take the decisions of a judge in a particular realm. Like say property law or something like that, or some simple realm, so that we can look at their judgments, and then based on the time of day, right? Does the judgment change? Think about it. Like as the guys working from morning till noon, right? Presumably to lunch. As lunchtime approaches, does the judge change his behavior? Does that make sense?
I have a feeling that this has already been done, and if it hasn't, then what are the data people in the law? What are you guys doing? There's a whole profession for this.
Really?
Yeah.
So see if you can find out about that. That's kind of interesting, because I'm like, I've heard such stories, and I'm like, okay, there's a time to appear before the judge and a time to not be there. Just call a recess and let him have lunch and relax a little bit before you start back, because he's going to be tired and irritable.
No, there's probably, so I would say that the chances of that manifesting itself negatively in your instance are very low, but I think that there was certainly, but the other thing you'd have to think about, you'd have to get each judge's like dietary routines and stuff too. No, I mean, do they only eat in the morning? Do they eat at lunch? Do they only eat at night? Like, do they drink coffee? You know, when do they show up at the judges' chambers? Like, there are a lot of other variables, but no, I think that, you know, if you could just say from T = 0 is the first banging of the gavel or the sergeant at arms or whatever, through the closing gavel, just break them all up into gavel point to gavel point, and then overlay, you know, percentage of time. Like, is it just logarithmic? Is it, you know,
it's just an interesting function. It's like
linear? Is it?
There's a whole lot of math in there,
parabolic? Man. Yeah, I don't know. And so, you know, I paid a lot of money to learn how to do statistics at a undergraduate college. So, you know, let's put it to use, right?
And see what you find out, man. It's like, just a thought, man. It's like, what does that mean?
No, but this is like this is why I'm so interested in the academic side of the law here, is like, we can pontificate about proper legal theory, but then there's this other practical applied side. So it's like, you know, I preferred not to hire political science students in politics. And so it's like, maybe the people who are trained as lawyers are like being trained to turn off like these sorts of like questions. Like, you're not, like, law school is not about in any way about like developing thoughts about the legal order, the way the law works or anything. It's really just it's a 3-year forced bar examination prep course that they literally pay for you to take the actual bar prep course after you're done graduating too. So it's like, to pass, dude. To pass. Yeah, all you have to do is pass the test. And so we're going to provide you, after 3 years, with the cramming methodology necessary to pass the bar exam. What have I been doing here for 3 years then? If we have to use the bar prep software anyway, and you guys...
Whoa. If you have to ask, you're not going to get an answer, brother.
Don't ask questions.
Wait. And you're paying your student loans, right?
Not yet, because I'm still in school. So.
Oh, they give you an abeyance?
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. I thought they quit doing that. I don't know. I just am like this. It's like, okay, it's just all.
I mean, maybe I pay it, but not like, I might pay it as a portion of my loans, but I don't know the exact. I can't remember if there's an interest line in the spreadsheet, because it's like, if you're already ripping me off anyway. It's like,
that's what I said when I went to medical school. I'm like, this is like, I said, you know, they're going to ask us for donations on the back end. And I'm like, I paid up front.
You don't know this. Dean Farnsworth is leaving the law school.
You told me that.
Or not leaving the law school, but he's not going to be dean anymore. And it's
he's going to still be there.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I have less of a problem saying this now. It's like, I'm very strongly considering suing the law school for time with the coronavirus. Hey, there it is. That's my man.
I'm gonna study it some more, because I was watching some senators give some talks. I'm like, oh, this needs to be put into the rhetoric machine, man.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I don't think so. Like, nowadays, with the way the media is, like, there is no, like, the way rhetoric works now is like, what's the best way to get myself on the news for this little sentence? That's how rhetoric works. It's not like it's less subtle and less. At least in politics, you know, it's a coarser form of rhetoric. It might resemble in
Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, no, and this is the thing. Like, I was not initially a Trump supporter in 2016. I was working in politics, and I was like, I don't know. But this time around, if he runs again, it's like, this guy, for all of his warts, he has become the personification of all the corruption and awfulness that can be foisted upon the American people. And so, like,
that's interesting. Like,
and so now I owe it to him to support him to fight back against these guys, because if let
me examine that premise a little bit, because it's very interesting. He is like a nucleating point for both sides, and he's like, it is the point of contention. Which is the point of contention, which is the conflict of the clashing intuitions, realism versus subjectivism. And that is and it's like this, they both see him in opposite ways. And it's absolutely to do with the diode. So he's the litmus test for which way your diode is in. And it's like, if you hate him, your diode is in subjective over objective.
So I'm working on a gun case that's at the Fourth Circuit, and basically federal regulations make it so you can't buy a handgun through the FFL system, which is the only way to buy a handgun through the background check system unless you are over 21. So that means that adults, fully emancipated, legal majors, aged 18 to 21 are foreclosed from buying a handgun through the national background check system. My friend tried to buy a handgun under 21, and my other friend's the attorney, and so that's how I got to help it. But basically, we're at this situation where, my friend is like the friend who's suing, not the lawyer. My friend who's actually involved in the case. He sometimes says like, I don't want to do this or that because they're gonna attack me in the media or whatever. And it's like I was thinking about it. It's like, dude, these people are going to attack you no matter what. Think about what they're attacking you for, dude. They want universal background checks, but they are attacking you for trying to make it so that you have to sell to people 18 to 21, go through a background check. Or at least more of them who want to do it right can do it. How can you possibly be against this? Do you just if this is the proper gun policy, then why don't we just have no background checks? Nobody can buy through the FFL system if it's better for 18 to 21-year-olds, right? But the thing is, the point of this is the harpies are going to harp. That's why they're called the harpies. We've professionalized the harpy class. They tend to write little soliloquies about their bad days at publications like Colette or whatever. Not Colette. Well, that's a good one. At Salon or whatever. And their job is literally just to find shit to harp about, no matter what. And it's like these people, the people who are predisposed to harping about you will never be convinced by anything you do or say, dude. So don't modulate your behavior and what you believe to be true and the most efficient and effective argument because you're worried about muting the criticism. And it's like the criticism is going to come.
Right.
I'm on the front page of Yahoo News as an extreme radical because I supported the gold standard and said silver is a reasonable currency and that the FDA takes too long to approve things. And it's like, this was before white supremacy was big, thank God. So I wasn't plastered, with that moniker on international news.
Better knock on wood, brother.
Well, no, I don't care, but I used to be more sensitive about it too. It's like, I used to get really upset when people would call me a white supremacist because unlike anybody who has ever called me that, I was actually there at Charlottesville counter-protesting the people from Michigan and the Nazis and all the non-local people, because the local people who were there were being told it was just save the statue. But like my friends and I who are internet savvy are like, this dude is not bringing together a group of people that is likely to leave without major disturbance or death. It's like, so, I stood up for what I thought was right. I stood up against identity politics. I stood up against the damn Nazis at Charlottesville, the literal Nazis at Charlottesville, the ones who were there with their gay-looking pretend Nazi outfits and like stupid-ass signs. And then, so I used to get really damn offended when people, especially after Charlottesville, would call me a white supremacist. It's like literally posting shit on the bottom of a Facebook post about how white supremacist something is totally different than actually putting your ass on the line. And so you're going to sit here and call me a white supremacist.
You didn't explain that you were assaulted in such a fashion.
Oh yeah. So all right, let me tell that story a little bit more. So yeah, Charlottesville's happening. My friends and I are getting death threats from the guy who's organizing it because we're like, you're a bad person. He's like, come get some mother effers. At August 12th, blah, blah, blah. He threatened to kill me, which is, I guess, a little bit of pride. But anyway, my buddy Richard Fox and I got into my truck, and I used to have magnetic bumper stickers. I put as many like ridiculous conservative, like over the top bumper stickers all over my truck. We blasted the U.S. military band playing Dixie at the top of our, so my truck is coming in, and there's like Trump stuff, and like it's blasting Dixie, and we're driving past the Traditionalist Workers' Party or, some group of mama's boys that hate Jews and haven't really grown up or anything. And they are coming down to their little party. And they think that we're with them because, you know, they hear Dixie and, oh, there's a Trump sticker. And then my buddy Richard, whose family's been farming Albemarle for 400 years, literally since the 1600s, he pulls out a sign that said, the only thing worse than a damn Yankee is a damn Nazi. And so they did not take well to that, because basically all the people who were there as the, like, you know, not just normal people from the area, but all the outside interlopers were all from Michigan and freaking Boston. And they're coming down. And I say that those Yankee idiots are the reason that those statues came down a few weeks ago in Charlottesville. And it's like, I knew that you guys doing this is you're having your little flat. And that's like, that is beta behavior, trying to run around and like intimidate and like show force and like all that sort of stuff. In the way that they were doing it was beta behavior. And so anyway,
it's symbolic and not real.
Right. It's like, who gives a shit if you have a bunch of people who like to play dress up in the same damn uniforms that are tacky as hell, and like, yes, they look sharp in the 40s, but you look like a fucking clown. Pardon my French.
So the issue with this is those guys would be happy they took the statues down because it upsets conservative people. So they're interested in disruption of the situation.
They're accelerationists. I would agree with that. They just they're no better than the damn social justice warriors.
They're just progressives of a negative sort, right?
There are people who fundamentally believe that politics ought to be determined by groups. And there's people who believe that politics ought to be determined by individuals. And I think that there is often or occasionally value in subordinating the individual to the group. I'm not making a claim.
That's right.
But these people who have completely internalized their own identity based off of some participation in a group, or like being a part of like the neo-Nazi movement or any of that stuff based on identity and group thinking, are the people who are engaging in this subversive behavior. Even though they're like, oh, we're fighting against the social justice warriors. Well, it's like, you know, just because the communists and the Nazis were fighting each other in Germany during the 30s doesn't mean I have to pick a side. I can be like, yo, we should be just doing normal
isolation.
It's not, you know, hey, why are we talking about killing everybody and what's going on?
That seems a little bit rough. We don't need all this.
Group? Like, what if this other group gets in control and then like doing the Tutsi?
It's like, it was like, maybe we should just sell them both sides stuff.
Make money, man.
Well, this is like Chicken Little, but back to Chicken Little. How do I profit from this collapsing function? There you have it.
How do you profit?
That's it. See, this is where I'm looking right now, because it's like this. It's like, look, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Make sure that's number one. Don't get hit by the chunks of sky as they come down. Number two, how do you make hay out of this situation, Chicken Little? Right? Because it's like, it's happening. This is the season. It's collapsing around your ears. It's like, make hay.
I think
that, right?
I think, you know, we're talking literally about metaphors and abstraction. So I would say, like, probably the best way to make hay is not going to be like, oh, I'm directly profiting into my bank account off of some way to arbitrage the corruption. I think that making hay involves more abstract fortification.
Right. I was suggesting the same thing, because I was chatting with a young man yesterday, and the conversation turned to this. He's telling me about his grandiose plans and schemes and ways to make money, and it's like, yeah, don't do that right now, because what we do right now is lay groundwork for that which is to come. So we have prepared the grounds for the influx which is to come. That is the new establishment which will be built upon the rubble of the sky as it comes down. Never
fight on ground of the opponent's choosing.
That sounds like Sun Tzu.
Probably Napoleon, Sun Tzu. It's in World's Rules too. But it's like, think about Lee at Gettysburg.
Right.
I'm trying to make sure, I would say up to that point, excluding early conflict, that was the first time that he fought on a battlefield of the enemy's choosing, and then subsequently did a full frontal assault. So it's like the bad decision was already made to fight on this ground because they chose it and they've already dug in. But then you compounded the error at the end by, instead of swinging your army to the south and cutting off the dug-in troops from Washington, forcing them to leave their fortifications, like this, I think that Gettysburg was Lee's greatest military blunder. I think that should be obvious. It's just like, and he was starting to show his age a little bit too. It's like, you can't just,
hey, wait a minute,
already made a mistake. You can't multiply it by compounding
double down. Don't double down.
Right. And he just had too much faith in Pickett's division. He thought that they would, the division. And it's like, that was false belief. It's like they were dug in better than you all were at Fredericksburg. And the Irish boys got chopped up bad trying to take the wall. So we see this all the time. But anyway, to pull it back, bring it back. I don't think that there's a way to directly profit. I think that you just need to fortify yourself. You need to fight on battles of your own choosing. Avoid being the whack-a-mole mole. And if you do pop up, make it quick and be careful unless you are ready to face it. And here's the thing. A lot of the left doesn't understand. Like, they have this strange notion that only if the government coerces, it's coercion for some reason. So it's like the vaccine stuff and the passports and all this other nonsense. It's like the government. Yes, I agree. The government is not Facebook, and like the First Amendment, in theory, applies only to the government, whatever, right? But it's like the corporations that are doing this are literally incorporated, given a body by the government.
Well, no, this looks like fascism to me. I'm like, it's just a corporate synergy.
Right. So it's
interests of the public.
Yeah, nominally. But yeah, so there's no profiting to be made. You just have to do the best you can. And the other thing I'm saying is, like, you don't have, like, I'm getting kind of, maybe it's the quarantine, maybe I'm getting old, maybe I'm just old, maybe I'm, whatever. But it's like, I've kind of grown tired of just turning the other cheek. It's like, I'm not talking about actually getting punching back. I'm talking about when I hear somebody say something that's literally racist or whatever, bigoted in some way, it doesn't matter whether you're saying it about white people. In my society, we don't talk crap about people based on stuff they can't control. You don't talk crap about the guy in the wheelchair, how he can't run for office. You don't call the slightly slow person an artard. Like, you don't, that stuff you can't control. And so I thought we as a society had agreed that to move on from such. That was
a literal liberal settlement. Okay, now the postmodernists have moved beyond it,
and they've convinced the liberals that had been part of the status quo ante that the status quo post is the same. And it's like,
they pulled the wool over their eyes. It's pretty amazing.
It's like, it's so damn surreptitious and awful and
duplicitous. It's duplicitous.
So, for example, the big one right now is changing equality. Or equality to equity. And it's like, you ask someone who's not one of these motivated ideologues, well, what do you mean by equity? They define it as equality. They would offer the definition, I'm supporting equality. And then you say, no, equality requires, that's what you've defined is equality. Equity is very different. Equity means if Black people are dying at 2% more from heart attacks, that means that the entire medical system is racist and must be abolished.
Right.
That's racial equity. Any system, according to Ibram X. Kendi, how to be an anti-racist, which I would like to write a response called "How to Be a Racist" by Ibram X. Kendi.
Oh my!
Zachary Werrell. But the whole point is so the equity argument is anything that does not produce measurable equality between groups is racist and ought to be destroyed in order to create more equitable society. So they have to tear down whatever parts of the system they think are responsible for that 2% increase in heart attack rate or whatever, at the expense of everybody else trying to maximize their health outcomes too.
Right.
Like the surreptitious switch to equity from equality is the same thing like we're seeing. So now, oh God, what was the term? They came up with a new term for illegal aliens. And I'm like, man, they are just one step away from calling them undocumented citizens. And oh, that's right. No, they're starting to call them undocumented non-citizens or something. And it's like they're literally one prefix away from saying they're undocumented citizens. It went from illegal alien, which is a flatly correct legal term, to, you know, illegal immigrant, to undocumented immigrant, to undocumented non-citizen. Where's the last little bit of reduction to blur the line between actual immigrants and people breaking immigration law? And then they do this. That's how they get you to say, oh, you hate immigrants because you want to end illegal immigration. It's like, no. There are two kinds of immigrants. There's those who do the proper paperwork and necessary things to join our body politic. And then there are people who don't, and they come anyway and don't follow the rules. There's a difference in those two groups based on following the rules or not.
Right.
And unlike the liberal who thinks that all illegal immigrants are Mexican, I recognize that, you know, illegal immigrants come in all shapes and sizes, and most legal immigrants are great people and better Americans than, frankly, a lot of natural born people.
I don't know about that, but okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I just go like this, like, I'm not here to judge that. I don't want to talk about that.
I think there's a better chance you find somebody who loves America among a group of legal immigrants than you do among a group of just natural born citizens.
Maybe. I think that's probably fairly likely. They like the place more than the people who are born here because they actually used their legs and made some sacrifices to get here, right? As opposed to carp about it because they take it all for granted.
Right. So, no, yeah. So this is, again, these are the little linguistic shifts that they do.
It's insidious, and it's subversive, corrosive behavior.
Well, so here, to show you just how corrosive and subversive and nonsensical this is, Ibram X. Kendi, who is the foremost expert on racism in the United States. I could show you the video of him at the Aspen Ideas Festival being asked to define racism. And he included in the definition of racism the word racism 3 times. So his definition of racism is any racist system that results in racist outcomes perpetuated by racist stereotypes. Oh, so what you're saying is the definition of racism is whatever you say it is and want it to be.
Right. It's like the judge. It's like, I don't know what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
I think that's a beautiful saying and like meme and zeitgeist, but I don't think that's I think you can define pornography.
I know. I'm just saying it's a famous.
I know who said that. Was it Scalia that said that?
I don't know.
Scalia, I love him, but it's like, no,
you can make a definition for it.
Videographed or photographed sexual engagement, not for keeping for posterity between the two involved, I would say is pornography. If you're
all right, I'm good with that.
Once you get away from actual sex acts towards just like foreplay or words, you start to go away from pornography.
Wait. When it's mere suggestion of behavior as opposed to actual behavior.
I think pornography is, videographed or photographed or some other recording of sex acts intended for voyeuristic.
Right, we're in agreement. All right, now that we've solved that Werrell problem,
yeah,
it's okay. Zach, I got to get rolling. So I want to thank you for appearing on this episode of the Best Medicine Podcast. Well, I'll catch up with you later and we'll chat.
All right, sounds good.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Best Medicine Podcast with Bradley H. Werrell, D.O. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, either over there or over there. Also, if you're interested in a medical consultation with myself, there's also information below.